Previously in episode 5, we went through in which situations we should use definite or indefinite forms, bestämd och obestämd form in Swedish. We talked about that the usage in general is quite similar in English and in Swedish. We use definite form, bestämd form, for something specific in a context, and indefinite form, obestämd form, for something general or a category of things or people. However, when it comes to the usage of articles, there are some differences. For example, in English, you would say, he is a Buddhist, she is a medical doctor, I am a social democrat, when you describe a person's religion, occupation, or political stand. But in Swedish, you would not use the article a. You would say, han är buddhist, hon är läkare, jag är socialdemokrat. So in English, we are describing a person as a special kind of person. But in Swedish, the logic is to describe a category. So when you're saying jag är läkare, jag är lärare, you're saying I belong to a category of occupation. In English, you would say, for example, I like to play the guitar. But in Swedish, we would say, jag gillar att spela gitarr. So in English, you would use the article the, but not in Swedish in this case, when you describe an instrument, for example. So the logic in English is that you are saying, I like to play this specific instrument. But in Swedish, you're actually saying, I like to do this general activity. So spela gitarr is seen as a general activity, whilst in English, I like to play the guitar, you are specifying this specific instrument. Okay, maybe you feel it is a little bit overwhelming now with so many rules and so many abstract details to think about, but I wouldn't suggest you to take these as a kind of rules to remember. Rather, I would suggest that you take this as something to think about for your future study, something to pay attention to when you encounter those examples. And also to remember maybe some of the frequently used examples. For example, when you introduce yourself, you would say, for example, I am a teacher, jag är lärare, and make these examples alive in Swedish for you and try to understand the logic behind them. And in the end, you will master all this. Trust me. Okay, today we are going to dive in to explore the structure of definiteness and indefiniteness in Swedish, and also a little bit in English, to understand how to conjugate the adjectives and the nouns in Swedish when applying definite form or indefinite form, bestämd och obestämd form. So let's start with what definiteness and indefiniteness are marked in English. Again, so in English, we use the articles to mark the definiteness, and indefiniteness, we use article a or no article when it's not definite. We use the article the when it's definite. For example, the car I bought is very environmental friendly. I bought a car yesterday, indefinite. Or I like cars, a category of things which is not needed to be definite. In Swedish, it is slightly more complicated. So the adjective form in Swedish has a definite and indefinite form, and also singular and plural form, of course. So let's see the indefinite form of adjective. Here we have an example. Fin, beautiful. fin, fint, fina. Fina is the plural form of fin. And you need to also think about en or ett word in Swedish, which is the gender of the words. When it comes to the definite form, bestämd form, we have fina, fina, fina for singular and plural. So now you may find out the confusing point in these specific adjective forms is actually that the plural form and the definite form actually are overlapped in Swedish. So when you see fina, it can mean it is definite, it can mean it is plural. So fina can be singular, plural, definite. Fina can mean plural. Now let's put adjective together with noun, substantive, and to see what we should think about when we use both adjective and noun. So the nouns should also be conjugated together with the adjectives. For example, in indefinite form, obestämd form, you would say en fin bil, a beautiful car, en fin bil, ett fint hus, många fina bilar. Bilar is the plural form. Fina is also the plural form. So många fina bilar. Bestämd form, definite form. Den här fina bilen. This beautiful car here. So here you see we also changed the car to the definite form, bilen. So bilen is the definite form of the car. Det här fina huset. This beautiful house. De där fina bilarna. Those beautiful cars. So the cars, plural definite form is bilarna. So when using adjective and nouns, substantive, we need to think about their own forms. If it's definite, if it's indefinite, if it's singular, if it is plural, if it is en or et. So a lot to think about, a lot more to think about compared to English. So compared to how we use definite and indefinite form in English, it is slightly more complicated to apply bestämd eller obestämd form in Swedish. So in Swedish, the definiteness is not only marked by the articles, but also marked by the accordingly conjugated nouns and adjectives. Så inte bara artiklar, utan också substantiv och adjektiv. Här har vi några exempel. Here we have some example. Obestämd indefinite form. Jag köpte en fin bil igår. Jag har ett fint hus. Här skulle vi säga samma i engelska. Here we would say the same in English. I bought a beautiful car. Yesterday I have a beautiful house. But in Swedish you need to think about if it's en word or ett word. Någon, något, några. They means any. So har du någon bil? Do you have any car? In this case we also use indefinite form, obestämd form. And in spoken language you would say någon. So har du någon bil? Någon eller not in spoken language. After plural, we also use indefinite form. Han har köpt många bilar. Jag åt 3 pizzor igår. So in Swedish, apart from applying the counting words, you need to think about the plural form of the noun. So up until here, it is quite similar. to the English usage. But when it comes to the definite form, it's more complicated in Swedish. So bestämd form, when you use definite form in Swedish, bilen, huset can mean the car or the house. So in English, you have to use the article sometimes, the car, the house, to say it is definite. But in Swedish, it is not always necessary. Sometimes it suffices when you apply the definite form of the noun, bilen, huset. Till exempel, jag köpte en bil. Bilen var väldigt dyr. I bought a car. The car was very expensive. Bilen var väldigt dyr. So here you wouldn't need to use the car, den bilen. It is not necessary. But sometimes you need to apply the article den, det. When you have something more to say after, when you have something, probably a subordinate clause after it. Så till exempel, den dyra bilen som jag köpte är inte så miljövänlig. The expensive car that I bought is not quite environmental friendly. The expensive car. So here you are defining the car further with an adjective, the expensive car, den dyra bilen. In this case, you would use the article den in Swedish. And you are also trying to describe further by applying a subordinate clause, som blah blah blah, the car I bought, the car that I bought. Den dyra bilen som jag köpte. In this case, you would also use the article. But let's go back to the previous example. If you are just saying the car to referring to the context earlier, in this case, you wouldn't use the article den. You would use the article den här, den där, de här, de där, when it is demonstrative, when it's physically demonstrative. For example, det här huset är jättefint. This house here is so beautiful. Så det här huset är jättefint. Här, you are actually demonstrating, you're pointing to the house physically. Det här huset är jättefint. So if you compare with the previous example is not really physical. It's not pinpointing the physical position. It's more to refer to the previous context or to the implicit context. But when you use det här, det där, it is always concrete and very substantial positions physically. But sometimes in some formal context, we would use another set of articles in Swedish. Så ibland i informell kontext använder vi olika artiklar. For example, we would use denna, detta, dessa. They're equivalent to this or these in English, but compared to the previously mentioned den här, den där, here, denna, detta, dessa, they are less demonstrative, they are less physical, they're more abstract to referring to a specific thing. For example, denna dag är en sorgens dag för Europeiska unionens institutioner. This day is a day of mourning for the institutions of the European Union. So denna dag, this day, it is an abstract way of pointing out a specific day. So the rules and the grammars are a little bit different. Let's look at these two examples. Denna fina dag. Den här fina dagen. Now you may realize that after denna, after article denna, we wouldn't use the definite form of the noun. We use indefinite form, obestämd form, dag. But after den här, we would use the definite form, bestämd form, dagen. Den här fina dagen. Denna fina dag. And the adjectives are definite. The adjectives är bestämda. And there is an exemption to think about only in formal text that you may sing an example, for example, den dag som blah blah blah. So in a formal text, sometimes you see that we don't use the definite form of noun, substantive, after the article den, together with the usage of som. So this usage are combined with the usage of som. So the day that blah blah blah, well, it's also not restricted to the word day. It's for all the nouns would apply the same rules. So den dag som blah blah blah. After possessive pronoun and genitive form, we would use the same structure as denna, detta, dessa. So possessiva pronomen, possessive pronouns are, for example, din, ditt, dina, min, mitt, mina, hans, hennes, vår, vårt, våra, er, ert, era. Those are the possessive pronouns in Swedish. So after the possessive pronouns, you would use the indefinite form of the noun, din bil. But you would use the definite form of the adjective. For example, din fina bil. Eller dina fina bilar. Here we need to think about the plural form and the definite form are the same. So dina fina bilar. Genitive form. The genitive form refers to, for example, in English you have also genitive form. For example, David's mother. In English it's marked by S. In Swedish it is also marked by S. Evas, Davids, mammas. Till exempel, Evas bil, obestämd form. Evas fina bil, fina bestämd, bil obestämd. Evas fina bilar, bilar är obestämd, fina är bestämd. So the rules and the patterns are the same as denna, detta, dessa. The positions of the adjectives actually also matters when it comes to whether to apply definite or indefinite form. So let's summarize and look deeper into this structure with another angle, with the angle of the position of the adjectives. Sometimes we have adjectives after certain verbs. For example, in English, we usually have adjectives after are or is. For example, you are nice, he is good, she is nice, for example. So in those positions, when you find adjectives after certain verbs, we call them predicative. Predikat på svenska. Så predikat efter bland annat följande verb. So after the following verb, vara, to be in Swedish. Jane är snäll, Jane is nice. Jane och Anna är snälla. So you see here singular, snäll, plural, snälla. Efter blir, Malin blev sjuk idag. Malin och Ulf blev sjuka idag. Malin became sick today. Malin and Ulf became sick today. But the first sick is singular, the second sick is plural. And also after the verb ser ut. Ser ut means looks. Den här glassen ser god ut. This ice cream looks delicious. Det här äpplet ser gott ut. This apple looks delicious. After the verb känna sig, it's also a reflexive verb. Känna sig means feel. Jag känner mig glad. I feel happy. Vi känner oss glada nu. We feel happy now. Verka means seems. Den här boken verkar rolig. Det här programmet verkar roligt. After låta, sounds. Det låter fint. It sounds nice. So after those verbs, we would use adjectives and we would only think about singular, plural, en or et in those positions. So it's actually much easier to think. Så i predikativ ställning står adjektivet alltid i obestämd form. In another word, in predicative position, the adjective is always in indefinite form, i obestämd form. In other cases, we would have the adjectives before nouns. When the adjectives are positioned before nouns, we need to think more. We need to think about definiteness or indefiniteness. So adjectives before nouns are called attributive. De positioneras direkt framför ett substantiv. They are positioned directly before the noun. And here I have a summary of what to think about when the adjective is positioned before a noun. You can pause this video and to see and to review all these rules if you like. Now, let's do a test together and to see if we've mastered the usage of the adjectives and the nouns. So the first time I would read without telling the answers, and the second time I will review the answers. Elin har adopterat. Hon vill döpa till Gunnar. Men Elins två gillar inte. De vill att ska heta Milou eftersom deras hund liknar den där i tantans äventyr. Elin tittar på och säger ja, den är precis lika som Milou. Now the answer. Facit. Elin har adopterat en hund. Hon vill döpa hunden till Gunnar. Men Elins två gulliga söner gillar inte namnet. De vill att hunden ska heta Milou eftersom deras hund liknar den där smarta hunden i tantans äventyr. Elin tittar på hunden och säger ja, den är precis lika söt som Milou. Tack så mycket för den här videon. Tack för att du tittar på den här videon. Vi ses nästa vecka. Hej då!